Okay, so we have this week's Torah talks with Torah portions, Torah talk with Torah portions, and Torah talks with Torah buildings, buildings that rise up, and the buildings that fall down. And the question is, do they fall down on their own, or do they fall down because somebody may have attempted to breach? They tried to attempt to wear boxers instead of breeches, or something. There's anyways. This week's Torah portion was Parshat. What was it again? I barely even read it. I did read it, believe it or not, but I don't know if I guess I read it. I mean, I read it years ago, and I kind of like skimmed it this week. I'll tell you, there's a hidden reason why. So I discovered post facto. I did not know the hidden reason going into the event, but I potentially made a true or false correlation post facto. And but this week's Torah portion was the portion after Balak, and it was what? It was Pinchas. Pinchas was a special character in all of the Torah, a very special character because this dude was zealous, or something. The person attributed to unfortunately a Torah prohibition. It doesn't tell you, even in the commentary, even in this. So you can read the entire Stone edition of the Torah and memorize it word by word. Even the commentary, you can memorize it if you want. If you have nothing better to do, and you said, my wife left me, and my children hate me, and my job, I'm barely surviving I'm barely surviving on what the people have left me with. I do have some sort of livelihood, but what I do doesn't necessarily have too much of an impact necessarily. And so, if you want to memorize the Torah, the Stone edition of the Torah word by word, you go right ahead. And believe it or not, you will still be incredibly inaccurate in every single interpretation if you were to redact it word by word to a rabbi or the people or whatever. And this is what they don't tell you in the non-traditional rabbinical schools. You could actually be the number one student in the Stone edition of the Torah with the commentary. It actually has rabbinical commentary explaining word by word what it says, and you could be like A plus plus or whatever system that they use, whether they use letters, whether they use numbers. You could be 5.0 out of 4.0. But in my high school dip, it was Deep Thoughts, DP, Dos Pueblos, my high school that I went to in Goleta. I went to other high schools as well, but I believe those high schools hopefully for right now will remain silent, Baruch Hashem. But the high school that I actually graduated from, I did graduate despite my interpretation of the Torah. I also did actually earn a degree from college, although they have not actually given that degree to me. I have enough credits to actually get the degree, some sort of associates, and then, believe it or not, in California and I think in Alabama, they don't require accreditation. They have these accredited law schools. They're state accredited, so they don't require like a four-year college degree. Basically, it requires just enough credits from a qualifying university, which I happen to have, and then a qualifying score on the LSAT, which I took the LSAT. I studied for like 2 or 3 days beforehand, literally, and I got necessarily no sleep. And I went in, I took the LSAT, then I qualified to go to a state accredited law school. And I attended. I paid the fee. They gave me a little piece of paper receipt. I'm not even for sure if I would be in their databases post facto because this law school, particularly, I'm not sure if they even had advanced databases or not. So I remember some of the people that I went there with. I think Stephanie's husband was the fire chief or a fireman in Long Beach. And Todd, I gave Todd one of my law books. I purchased these law books and I read some of them, and I said, after the first couple of weeks, I said, this really isn't for me. I was running a legal services company at the time, and so I figured, well, maybe it's a good idea if I become an official lawyer if I'm going to make this legal services company my actual career and livelihood, because I was generating some income with the legal services company, actually really helping people mamash with the legal scenarios. However, there was people always, being a newbie and business owner, people always complained about things, and you rarely ever found out if the services ever helped anybody in any way, shape, or form. So oftentimes you'd only hear about the complaints of things, and so I didn't continue on building that company because it was just a lot of work and things like that. And so my intention was to improve the company onto it to make it into a larger company to serve people at a greater capacity, and Anyway, so this guy Todd, he was going to be an attorney to represent strip clubs or something like that. That's what he told me, anyways. Those are my two classmates that I sat next to most of the time, and I gave him one of my law books. I think it was I kept the contracts book. He kept some other books, and I'm not for sure if he finished or not. Stephanie probably did. It seemed to me that was her personality, and so anyways, it took them 5 years. I quit and did other things. And so anyways, what was I going with this? Oh yes, it's the stone edition of the Torah. So you can memorize these things word by word and still be inaccurate. In other words, the interpretations of the stone edition of the Torah is not necessarily what the rabbis would consider accurate. In other words, it's kind of like knowing, I don't know, it's a difficult analogy. There's probably some analogies. I'm not going to take the time to realize some analogies that would be applicable. So in other words, what it says in the simple version of the Torah about Pinchas was, well, he was considered to be a great character in the Old Testament and in the Torah and in the simple version of the Torah and in the commentary. However, according to the rabbis, he would be a villain or evil. Why? Because he basically took a sword and slaughtered two people. Who did he slaughter? I mean, literally, supposedly, if you take the literal interpretation, I take the liberal side of the interpretation because it's easier for me. I would be taking the more conservative side of interpretation if I had more money and if I was raised according to the tradition. That's my actual mentality. So it's a little bit of catch-22 for me. I'm actually forced out of financial necessity to take more of a liberal paradigm to the interpretation of the Torah, saying that this is actually a metaphor. They don't actually redact any actual events in the Torah. Okay, they do not redact any actual events. They're spiritual metaphors about killing. Means it's actually they're talking about an entity or a spirit. So Pinchas kills the spirit of an Israeli leader who's violating some of the Torah prohibitions regarding sexual conduct and the ways how one should live one's life on a day-to-day basis, regardless of whether it was due to, the act of cohabitating or the act of, saying hello to the person in the appropriate ways for the appropriate reasons. So anyways, there's different levels to the laws, so on and so forth. If you do take that interpretation as an actual, if you take that interpretation as an actual event, then it would be Pinchas would be, although honored for doing quote unquote the in that time period as doing the actual righteous act, in modern interpretation or according to the rabbis, that person would be extremely low level and basically a murderer or at least a person who killed somebody. Would not be accepted in any yeshiva to study because of the ungrateful act. In other words, if you at all have ever killed anybody, even in battle for your country, whatever, you are completely exiled from rabbinic study, despite what anybody tells you. You may get some liberals to come along and say, well, whatever. So this is the actual interpretation of things. So anyways, so this is why you really actually have to have all the books to study. And including some of the it's helpful at times. And the unfortunate thing, sometimes you wouldn't even know what questions to ask, because if you were to read Pinchas and randomly say, was Pinchas actually, why was Pinchas considered a hero? It sounds to me he killed somebody without being told to at a higher level. And what is this kind of, what is this God that they're worshiping that tells people to kill other people? Sounds like some kind of crazed warlike marauding band of gypsies who are going around slaughtering people. To me, if I were to read it word by word, if I had my own brain, I have my own brain. I can easily read what it says. So this is why the interpretation of the rabbis is relatively important, because on somebody's own they wouldn't realize to ask, was that prohibition or was actually encouraged? You'd actually have to pay a rabbi, because that's their expertise, to discover the actual interpretation of something. Other than that, the rabbis, for the most part, are sitting wherever they're sitting, having a delightful time, laughing at everybody else taking these things literally. It's a source of enjoyment for them, even if they're wealthy or if they're poor. Because, I mean, come on, that's like watching somebody inerrantly interpret their scriptures so badly. It's like watching a I don't know, what's your favorite thing to do? Some people's favorite thing to do is to go to Disneyland. Let's go to Disneyland. Some people's favorite thing to do is go hiking. I like to cycle. I like to cycle and run and work out. Other people laugh at that. I realize that it's an animalistic thing, so to speak. But I enjoy working at so whatever. But I also know on the flip side, I also know the interpretation of Pinchas attempting to. So this is the story about. And they're also talking about the laws of inheritance, how to divide things, and then of course Benjamin Oni, the son of my sorrow, so on and so forth. Oni, believe it or not, in Korean means sister, but in Hebrew it means something else. Anyways, so the Torah portion is relatively interesting. And oh, by the way, it's the 17th of Tammuz. The commemoration, the what do they say? The remembrance of the destruction of the Second Temple. There were five reasons or 5 gazillion reasons why the temple was supposedly destroyed. You pick your favorite one and go with it. My potential favorite one is the lost losing sleep. On the Chabad website, it's the second. It's the second one down. It says Babylon. Please forgive me. There's a song by. The song is called Babylon. I forget who sung the song. The song is called Babylon. Please forgive me, for I know not what I do. I think they were counting. They lost sleep because they were trying to count all the sheep. This was in the some of the Babylonian yeshivas, apparently. Anyways, until next time, don't breach the walls, wear boxers or briefs, or something like that. Probably they were watching Monty Python. If they had, I don't know, what did they even do to have their little building dismantled? They had to have done something. They said they didn't do anything, but they probably didn't do anything. The other people probably just didn't have anything better to do. I don't know. So anyways, until next time, over and out.